Hi everyone, welcome back to the Quilty Life with Jen, George, Burt. Today we're going to tackle part 3 of improv composition. This is the last and I promise the final part of improv composition. By the time we get to the end of this episode, we are going to have a quilt top. So let's get started. Okay, so we've now made 4 bigger blocks and we still have all of the stuff left over. And we could, at this point, build more blocks if we wanted to. So I'm looking at this and just none of these are really just jumping out at me immediately as being what I want to work with and add to this quilt. And I really kind of like the 4 that I have so far. So I am just going to save all of these for something else. But I don't have to feel like I have to use all of these bits just because I made them. Think of them as your palette, and you don't have to use up all your paint when you get ready to paint a picture. So save these for another day. Put the cap on your paint tube and store them away until you find the right project for them. And here we are, our bigger blocks. So here's all of them that we made, and we're going to have a hard time fitting them all in screen here, but we'll give it a shot. So there's a lot going on, all right? It's very chaotic. We just want to look at it and think, what is speaking to us? And this last one that we made has a lot of directionality. And so it's sort of pushing up and in and out. And do we want the eye to be pushed into the quilt? Or maybe this kind of pushes out that way and sort of like maybe it'll quiet things down, because our main goal here, we have a lot of drama and a lot of chaos. Okay, so we sort of want to calm things down. We don't want to cause more chaos. So these stripes here, I did this accidentally, but I kind of like how it separates this one from that one and it doesn't make it feel so chaotic. This block all on its own is a little bit quieter than some of the other ones anyway, because we used more solid fabric in there. So maybe that one can live here. And then this one up here, what's the quietest part? I think this part is the quietest. So maybe it needs to go closer to the middle. Let's see. Yes, I kind of like that. But our problem is that these two together are a lot shorter than these two together in this orientation. So we could flip this around this way. And what do we think of that? I don't like how these triangles and these triangles are interacting. I really don't. So I'm going to put that back this way because I really do like this next to this. So we just need to figure out what to do with this guy. Can he go this direction? Maybe. Let's think about what we do and don't like about this. So these triangles in this corner are going all out, pointing in different directions. This is all sort of going up. This is sort of pointing that way. This feels like this, and then that arrow going that way. And then these are going like this. So maybe this forms a sort of flow that we like. This is pushing out this way. I don't know. How about this? Oh, I actually very much like this. This calmness next to this is doing something for me. I tried to put the calm next to this, but I think this works here, and these stripes coming out this way sort of make that carry out. I like this. So why do I like this? Let's stop and talk about this. So there's a lot of pink going on here. We pulled some pink up here. There's pink up here. We've got the blues and the blues. We've made sure that we've carried all of the elements throughout. We don't have all the pinks or all the oranges on one side. They're kind of all spread out. The stripes are all spread out as well, and they sort of make things feel like they're flowing around. Now, like I said before, you are completely within your rights to look at this and say, Jen, this is a hot mess. and I would never make anything like this. So honestly, this isn't something I would normally make either. So I normally wouldn't have used this chaotic fabric, but it was really helpful in this video series to use it. If this was all in solids, it would feel a lot less chaotic, I promise. But that said, I really like this despite the chaos. And I really like how there's things mirrored. This here is mirrored here. There's triangles here and there. There's a lot of stuff going on here that is just interesting and would force you to keep looking at this quilt. So let's think about how we're going to sew this together. There's two major ways you could do this. You could sew this to this, and then sew those two rows together. The other option is to sew these two together and these two together, and then sew them together that way. Let's look at, if we were to sew this one onto this one, we notice that these are dramatically different sizes. So if we were to sew these together, we're either going to have to cut this one off to make it as skinny as this one, or we're going to have to first add something onto this one before we sew it onto that so it's wide enough. Same thing here. This one is pretty wide and this one is skinnier, so we would have to do the similar sort of thing. Let's think about doing it the other way. This one is a little bit bigger than this one. It's not a lot, but we could easily cut some of this off and not lose anything, or cut some more across the top. So that might be the best way to do it. And then looking at this one is still dramatically longer than the other. But what if we thought about just adding something in here? So let's dig back into that pile of stuff that we said we were going to reject and reintroduce it. So remember these cool little guys? Those might work nicely here. And then we also have some little half square triangles. This one in the orange is pretty nice. And then, oh, I actually really like this right here. And this sort of pulls that down from here, that red, because we don't have a lot of red. So having that red in there might be really nice. What if we do like this? And then we have sort of another triangle pointing down there. I like that. And then we need something in this spot right here, but let's go ahead and sew these together and see how short this is. And there we go. I really like that. And then maybe we pull in one more little bit here. So just to make sure that little purple is going to be in there, I'm going to flip this piece around this way. If I put it this way, he might end up getting trimmed off or getting real small on the edge. So I'm going to flip him over this way to try to preserve that little purple triangle. And there we go. I really love it. So now let's compare it to the size of this one. This side is now a little bigger than this side. We need to decide how we're going to sew it together so that once we cut it down, we don't lose important bits that we care about. So I definitely want to try to keep as much of this triangle here as possible, since this is a pretty big element. That's pretty much the main thing that I want to preserve. And that little purple triangle, of course, which is going to be safe. So let's go ahead and cut this side off straight and that side off straight. Okay, so I cut this side off and that side off. And then I also went in and trimmed up this side along here. And we noticed that if we sew these together in this orientation, we're going to have to cut off all the way across here. We're going to lose a ton of this stuff. So what I want to do is add something on here along the bottom. And what I think I'm going to do is just sew on a strip of orange fabric. You might recall that I actually have a lot of it left over, so it's a good choice. And I think that's what I'll do. This is a classic example of coping. It's a coping strip. We're going to add this onto the bottom so that this gets big enough so it can be sewn easily onto this. Okay, there we go. So I've sewn this orange on. It's way too big on purpose, and I've cut the straight line, and I'm going to sew these together now. And there we go. So as you can see, this is extra long. This is still kind of wavy, but I'm going to leave it like this for now until I get to the end. That way I can square it up in the final stages. So now we move on to these two. We need to sew these together. So let's begin by straightening up this side, since this side is already straight. Now, as previously mentioned, I kind of care about this. I like that this mirrored something that was going on there, and I don't want to lose too much off the bottom here. However, the stuff up here, I'm not as in love with all of this. And remember, that was kind of bulky. So I think what we'll do is sew this onto this, and then we will just come in and cut it off straight, and we'll lose stuff along the top if we have to. So that's done, and I'm now going to cut this side and that side off straight. All right, I take it back. I'm only cutting this side off straight. I will leave that one big on purpose, just like I did with the other one, so we can have more room to square things up later. And now we put them together and we can see that they are actually really close to the same size. But the one thing to notice is the angle of this goes at an angle a bit. So if we want to have the side straight, I need to come in here and straighten this seam up a little bit. Otherwise, you're going to have a quilt that is straight at the top and then goes off to the side like this. So I can fix that by straightening up this first so that when you sew them together, you get more even sides after you sew. And there we go. That's going to be good. So let's sew top to bottom. And done. It is too big to fit in the frame now. So I'm going to do a slow pull across the table so you can see the whole thing for all the drama. And there we go. So you can see that the top and the bottom are very wonky. And sadly, this is crooked over here. And we are probably going to lose that little purple guy when we trim things down. But that's the only thing left to do at this point is to trim this off so it's a squared up quilt. And I'm not going to attempt to do that in the video because you're not going to be able to see it anyway in this space. So I'm going to finish that up and then I'll show a shot of this so you can see what it looks like when it's all done. I really hope that you've enjoyed watching me ponder through this and make this big, chaotic, crazy looking quilt top, and that you've learned a little something. So I'll see you back here next time for another episode of The Quilty Life with me, Jenn George Burt.